Hi guys, my name is Mary Fowler. You can just call me Cat Fowler, that's usually what I go by. So I wanted to start this video off by introducing myself really quick. I'll be doing the Module 1 summary for Chapter 1 of the James M. Johnson, Radical Behaviorism and ABA Practitioners. So I wanted to kind of provide a visual too, as well as my face. Please don't mind the background, we're kind of moving some things and it's crazy over here. So in the meantime, let me just kind of redirect this back to our slides here. So this chapter primarily focused on free will and determinism and the philosophical backings for both. So it started off with you're free to choose, or you're free to have choice. Primarily, it focused on regardless of outside factors or hereditary influencers, ultimately the individual has full control over their behavior. And so this piggybacked off of Skinner's view of within the skin. So essentially they're saying that whatever is going on within the skin or within your mind is ultimately controlling and mentally overriding those external factors. For example, you have full range and full choice over, do I want to have pizza for lunch or do I want to have a salad? And that's not influenced by anything else. Do I want to go see a movie? What movie do I want to go see? And you would have ultimate choice over that. Additionally, going more in depth with that free will, the assumption that we can make choices that are free from outside influences in a philosophical position. So assuming that individuals make decisions independently of environmental factors assumes that our inner choice is the source of the resulting behavior. So I know the consequences, but I'm choosing to do this anyway. I know that eating pizza isn't the healthiest choice, but screw it, I want some pizza for lunch, so that's what I'm going to do. Whereas determination focuses more on the behavior that is determined by those physical variables or by those environmental factors without any exception. So there's no exception or free choice in this. It's 100% those outside factors. Even if we are unaware of them. So we may not realize why we're choosing to do a specific thing, but ultimately it all comes back to those outside variables. Or we may not be able to initially identify why someone else is doing that specific thing. But again, it comes back to, even if we're unaware of that, it is or can be attributed to those outside variables, such as the physical variables, the environment, the hereditary factors there. And this is often respected by the natural sciences. So that's where we get our scientific method from. Everything has to be observable. And I think that is their strongest argument there that they present. And then they just kind of go into that free will versus determination. That it's impossible to fully support one side because we don't know the psyche, we can't study it. Proving other side would be nearly impossible because we would spend so much time focusing on one aspect and only trying to prove this one aspect or disproving the other without fully being able to know or understand it. So assuming free will, again, we're just playing with those perspectives and different assumptions with that, the whole philosophical field. We have full control and autonomy over our choices and actions without outside influences. Again, back to those environmental and physical factors, they wouldn't apply here. So everything would be random. If this was the case, your behavior would be completely uncontrollable. Being able to create treatment plans or implement treatment plans from an ABA perspective would be useless because everything is so randomized. It's whatever this person feels like at whatever time, no factors included, no outside factors included that we can study and observe. So it would be impossible to determine those inside or inner skin influencing factors because we're not inside their brain. We don't really know. It's that makes sense. So, assuming determinism. So, in this case, there are always causes for behavior regardless of the practical behavior of interest. So regardless of what their inner feelings are, there are always outside factors that we can nail it to or attribute this behavior or action to. They're all hereditary or environmental factors. There are no exceptions at all. And I think that's the biggest thing, is it's either one way or the other based on the beginning of this chapter and how we're going with that. And then the non-physical causation. So they brought up a couple other issues that also go into this philosophical debate that need to be weighed or suggested to be weighed so that we don't miss anything. So a couple questions that they post in the book that I put up here for you just because my words just are lacking at times. How can non-physical factors like mental qualities influence physical factors or events like behaviors? And then what is the name of this mechanism? How do we study it? So if there are internal factors, how can we identify them? How can we study them? How can we create a scientific approach to understanding them when we can't see them? We can't necessarily observe them, and we don't have the language or understanding of that to really develop it at this stage. The other issue that they brought up was responsibility. And the word in itself is something that we culturally view as having control over your own body. So this is something that we teach kids in elementary school. It is your responsibility to control your body and your actions in class, etc., etc. And the same with our legal system. It is the foundation and building blocks of our legal system. So without those, and then it introduces a new key term for us, the behavior consequences contingencies, which is the dependent relationship between responding and its environmental consequences, often involving a response resulting in a reinforcer. So this would be an example of if you're not home by 10 p.m., you're grounded for a week. And this is all also dependent on, one, the individual understands that if they're not home by this certain time, they're going to be grounded because they have had this in the past. They've had this consequence carried out. So it's on the individual to make that personal choice or that free will choice, as it is on those environmental factors. This is a consequence. If you don't do this, here's your consequence, which is the same thing that we see in our legal system. If you make the decision to murder someone, this is your consequence. You will have, 20 to life. Or I don't actually know what it is, but bear with me. But if you took the free will perspective on the legal system, then, so if we took the free will, you have the choice. You have the responsibility to control yourself and your behavior. But if we took the determinism viewpoint on this, where, well, it's not my fault I killed him. These were my environmental factors that put me in the position to do this. Well, then you kind of undermine the entire legal system and everything that we've built, especially in the U.S., surrounding that. Then we go back to choice. So determinism, again, it's an illusion to think, or claims that it's an illusion to think one can make decisions without environmental factors. So it's foolish, basically, to assume that we can make decisions without those environmental impacts being considered when we're making these. For example, if we're going to the movies, how do we know, or maybe we don't even realize, that our friend was talking about it and they made it sound really cool, so we were influenced by them to go see this specific movie that's coming out. Or maybe we saw a trailer and we were so excited, or it was on the news. So there are lots of environmental impacts that we receive on a daily basis that we may not even be aware of. The book also talked about choice versus preference, and again, this is mostly to do with our language. So a lot of what I've noticed throughout our readings is it comes back to our language and our essentially inability to create language that supports what we're trying to say and that we can intercommunicate with others. So choice versus preference, and then preference you can also say is your personal choice, or depending on how that's used in the English language. And then it talks about your spiritual freedom, that's separate from materialistic choices. That when you're spiritually free, you are able to kind of move past that, let go of those environmental, materialistic influences in order to make your choice. And then at the end, it adds a little blurb in chapter 1 about practitioners and the importance of kind of keeping, first off, being aware of both free will and determinism, and then also keeping perspective, especially in your personal practice. So individuals assume to have control over their actions at least some of the time. That's something that they stressed. And that plans and treatment must heavily rely on environmental factors. Because without that, how can, he just doesn't want to do it, sorry. But if we say, okay, well, we notice that when we have these positive reinforcers, or when we have these negative reinforcers, or these particular consequences, we're noticing a change in behavior. And it's those types of things that allow us to create plans and treatments and carry them out in a way that can help change or manipulate that behavior. And so essentially, how can we change our environment to create a change in behavior? And then questions that ABAs ask themselves all the time, practitioners ask themselves, what is the individual seeking to obtain? Again, it's observable, it follows that scientific method. What are the current, past, and future consequences of these actions? Again, these can be observable, they can be tracked, they follow that scientific method. So after all of this, a lot of information, the discussion question that I'm posting for you guys is, what do you personally believe about these opposing philosophies? So it's a lot, so bear with me, feel free to just tweak it and add your own. Which side do you tend to side with more? Is it more of the free will? Is it more of the determinism? Do you fall somewhere in between? But essentially, what side do you fall more with, and why? So that's all I've got for you guys today. Enjoy. Talk to you later.